Carlos Nelson with What's Up Kansas City. And today we have a guest from Penn Valley. As I always say, who do we have here?
Hello, and thank you so much for inviting me on the call. My name is Alicia Dickens, and I'm with Metropolitan Community College. We have 5 campuses, we call them 6 in the area because one's online. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor of Workforce and Economic Development there.
Hey, tell our audience a little bit about what that entails.
Well, basically that has everything to do with what people go to school for and what people strive for, and that is to be financially at a point where you can support yourself and your family, whether that is involved in getting a job or being promoted on a job or starting a business or growing a business, anything about pushing an idea forward and how do you do that is all involved with workforce. Workforce doesn't really stand alone. So we help with continuing education, we help with economic development, we help with training, we help with business growth. We find ways and funds that the state or the feds may put out there to help support businesses and individuals grow in the community and beyond.
All right, what I want to ask you, what qualifies you to be given that type of advice or running that position that you have on your background?
What qualifies me? Okay, so a couple of things. One, I would say God first. But outside of that,
He gave you a purpose.
Yes, sir. Now, I've traveled a couple of different routes that I believe prepares me. One, educationally, everybody wants to know about your paper. And so I've got a doctorate in neuropsychology and I've got a doctorate in business administration. However, that's not what actually taught me something. What taught me something is all the hickeys that I got through this path. My education came later on in life, but my path to this point of how important it is to think differently and have a different perspective about life is after being homeless, is after encountering alcohol and drugs, is after encountering domestic violence, it's after on and on and on and on. There's very few things that I haven't fallen into. I was one of those hard-headed children that made some poor and ineffective decisions in my life. However, to me, that was like a triple PhD because you learn a lot harder and a lot faster through failure than you ever do success. If you just knock the ball out the park, first time you hit it, you haven't a clue what actually got it there. But pain and failure, you know where that pain point is, and that's the better teacher.
Oh boy, they got you in the right position because we have a similar background with that homelessness and bad decisions. And as I told you, in my mind, I was a titan in business at one time, and then I was like, how you find yourself on the street? And my ex of 30 years, I was married 30. She always would say, the decisions you make today will affect what happens to you tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Hard head makes soft behind.
That is true. Part of my path was to start and grow a business. And one, I figured I was meant for that because I was so hard-headed and really had a hard time submitting to authority. And so I started a business, but what I didn't do was include insurance and all of those basic things that a lot of entrepreneurs don't think of. If you make pies, you just want to make the pies and you figure if you sell enough, you'll get rich. But that was a decision that impacted later because I ended up being diagnosed with cancer. And since I had no health insurance, I ended up having to empty all of my buckets. Praise God, there was enough there to go through 2 surgeries to do it. But that was a decision that I made on the front end of starting a business that ended up making a soft behind on the end.
Right. Do they have any internships as it relates to business in the lane that you're in over there at Penn Valley or the community colleges?
There are internships, but we're more in the line of connecting people with internships in businesses. So we develop relationships and collaborations with business and industry to help give individuals that personal experience. I was listening to one of your recordings earlier with Representative Bland, who had talked about a lot of times we don't pursue that lane of internships because we don't know it's there. And so it's as simple as reaching out. So yeah, we would facilitate that. We would be glad.
This program is brought to you by Dielectric LLC, Energy in Motion.
That out is some people go into fields just because their buddies go into it, or they heard us a lot of money, and that's not really where they're zoned to be, where their full potential will be made. And so it's easy to do kind of an assessment on the front end, and then let you do some internships and some work studies in these different industries to find out where that flow is, to build those relationships and get those people that'll open up the door for you.
All right, people of color. I'm not interested in the diaspora per se, because we are African American network. How do you read the kids and what's really on their mind as it relates to the era that they're living in, this micro age? What's important? Where do you see the kids that you're dealing with? What are they thinking and talking about? And how do you read that?
Well, I'm, to be honest, I'm probably a little bit more removed from day-to-day interaction, but I can say what I see in my community and what happened when I was in more day-to-day interaction. So it seems to be that there's and I don't want to say the entire generation is like
no,
this,
right.
there's always exceptions.
With a broad brush, but just what you walking around and you're average, got eyes in your head.
It seems outside of the obvious need for instant gratification that the internet and a lot of other digital things have produced, there seems to be not a real high tolerance as far as being able to handle and hold things. They're a lot more emotional, a lot more willing to give up when things don't follow through. You don't see that tenacity that you see in a lot of older population that had to have it. Because you had to walk a process through, and no didn't mean you stopped. It seems that there's a lot of, the buzzword now is pivot.
Well, these buzzwords kill me. Cohort, this and that. I'm like, keep it simple with layman's terms. Thank you.
Yeah, I call it giving up, but and there are times when you need to pivot. There's times when you're going down a path, you really need to get off that path, and that's legit. But I've noticed that with the instant society, when it comes to building your future and building your finances and building your career and building entrepreneurship or whatever else it is, if things aren't happening as quickly as you think they should, then that's when the pivot can, well, evidently I'm over here. Here's the nice little shiny thing, and let me run towards the shiny thing. And so I think that's one of the biggest telltales. The other thing, I wouldn't say it's lower level of intelligence, because with the internet, now there's information overload. I would say the biggest disconnect is how to properly apply what you learn. Okay, so you got all of this stuff, but through the internet and those types of medias, there's not really the connection on how do I apply it and how do I walk it through. And pretty much in minority communities and populations, we're more kinesthetic learners. We're people who put our hands to the plow and we learn by doing. And when that piece is missing, yeah, I can spit a whole lot of rhymes and I can, lay out a lot of intelligent sounding things. But when it comes to applying it to bring an outcome, an expected outcome that's needed, there just seems to be a little bit of a disconnect there.
You know what that is?
That?
I put it in simple terms. When I was coming up, I go to Kmart or Walmart or whatever department store. I see what I want. I go put that crap in the layaway.
I remember layaway.
and pay on it for a couple of payments. And there was no instant gratification. You got no instant paper. And so there's a thread that goes through the environment that at this point, being from New York, it was a joke. People would always say, you want to get things done in a New York minute or what have you. But that's where we're at. We're living in a minute to minute. And as from a business standpoint, you talked about pivot. For the last 10 years, I've had my eyes really open and understand businesses that are going to survive, they're going to have to be able to change directions on a dime, on a razor head, really. You see how I be saying Mr. Nelson's the nutty professor per se, because there's so many different things involved in what do I need to take another look or pivot per se, because this is not working. And
but I think the pivot can apply to the way you do the business, not necessarily changing your whole business.
yeah, well, what needs to be changed? That's what I'm saying. Not totally. You got to tweak constantly. The question I want to ask you, because you're not in the field, but you are in the field, because when you're on a campus, you just walking through the campus, you see the young people and you might have some conversation, but where do you see them as their competency level? Because over the last 8 years, I've had maybe 25 interns, maybe a little more from UMKC, William Jewell, and different things. And I see that they don't really understand life. They think because they get a degree, they're going to have the world by the tail, and they don't understand what real business is about. How do you look at that and get the notion of what's on TV versus what reality is to them? Because a lot of them are living in a false reality from my perspective.
Well, and I agree with that, because everything around us is that way, and especially post-COVID. Everything is, we learn through what other people say. There's not as many hard books. Reading a book is almost out of style. You're hard pressed to see a lot of people hanging out in libraries to learn independently. So yeah, you get fed a lot of different things. And I think, based on what I've noticed is planning and, goal setting. Where's my life going to go? Because that New York minute and everything having to happen now, and believing and understanding I'm going to live to that point. But I believe our young people are resilient. I believe that they're brilliant. I believe that they don't have enough opportunities to exercise that resilience. I think when we do a lot of saving and we do a lot of making things simple and lowering the competencies to try to allow people in, we don't give them the chance to build the muscles that are necessary in order to survive and to be great and express their own inner greatness. When we're sitting in a classroom that's not designed to teach us, it's one thing to teach a teacher how to teach. We're not teaching learners how to learn. So if I don't understand my learning style, I'm going to sit and get taught, and I'm going to walk out, and everybody's going to think I'm just as ignorant as I was when I went in, because we're not putting that competency, that role, that responsibility on the educator. We're putting it on the child to learn. And if they don't understand that my method of learning is more this way or that way, I'm going to begin to have a lower self-esteem. I'm going to begin to think I can't learn it. I'm going to think I need to be out there to make my way. And it's the same thing. You had talked about people thinking if I get a degree, I'm going to be fine. Well, that's still sitting in there, and maybe they were able to learn through that style of method of learning, but there's not that practical aspect of making that connection between the book knowledge and how does that apply, and where do I fit in that system?
Hey, you know what? That was a really good explanation, because that's how I was coming up out of high school or going into college, being an athlete per se. And I just thought people were smart. I'm serious. You know what you know. And I went down to Virginia State on a track scholarship and found myself in remedial courses and failing off and having to go to summer school. But when I wanted to pledge, I transferred to Central State University in Wilberforce. I wanted to pledge. You had to have a 2.3 grade point average. And they had a club. You had to, before you got online, you had to be in this for 6 months, but every day you had to go to the library. And I was going to the library just looking at the girls and, because you had to be there. and seeing my classmates, they in study groups and what have you.
Yeah.
It finally dawned on me that people just weren't smart, that you had to study. And I'm saying that to say a lot of our kids have different notions that you as a parent or whatever might not even know that that's how they thinking. One last thing I'll say on that. Told you I used to have the large construction company.
Right.
One of the major people in the Kansas City School District in sports. I used to really be his sponsor out of high school, and when I had the company in the summertime, he was the athlete, but he used to, when I was renovating apartment buildings, clean up behind everybody. And grown man, 25 years forward, I'm at a tournament or something, and we talk, and he says, Mr. Nelson, you know, I never seen a black man pay a white man before I seen you. Man, that almost floored me. So you never know what the kids are thinking.
Right.
But that, could you imagine, and I'm talking about, we're talking about in the 90s. That floored me. And so what you were saying about kinetic learning, that's how I am. I got to have hands-on. And then I realized I was just as smart as anybody on this damn planet.
And then you'll look at some groups where people get ostracized because they're rebellious, because they have a strong personality character. Those are leaders. Those are the business owners. But if we don't understand and look at them with that mindset, then we'll push them off to the side and they'll get disenfranchised. We've got to embrace all types of people because every one of them has a gift. Some years ago, Board of Public Utilities over on the Kansas City, Kansas side gave me a grant to go and inspect some things at a high school. What was happening is their class that they labeled BD or behavior disordered and all these kind of labels kept growing and increasing. So I went in and I assessed their learning styles. And I think it was upwards of 80% of them were kinesthetic learners. They weren't dumb, they weren't slow, they didn't have a problem. They just didn't know that this is how they learn. And right now, you talked about construction. Construction companies for prevailing wage are paying $35, $40, $50 an hour. And there's a need for it out there. But we're taught, like you were talking about with the degrees, we're taught you have to have this and you have to have that. And if you're not meant for that, if that's not the cloth that you're cut out of, you'll bump your head 500,000 times and then think life just isn't fair and it's just not for you, versus going down and following the river or the flow that you really should be in. And you can be business owner and whatever it is, conglomerate head, whatever that is that you're desiring to be.
In closing, what would you have to say to prospective students and to our community as a whole, as it relates to economic development and education, and let's throw C-19 and the virus into your closing statements?
I would say become a master at learning how to use resources that are around. So for example, at Metropolitan Community Colleges, a lot of people just think that that's the only thing you go there to do is just to get a degree or to learn. Even though that's true, we're a resource. People can come to help learn what types of jobs they can get trained in a short period of time. It doesn't have to take 2 years. There's trainings a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks that can give them a livable wage. Use the resource. If there's other things you don't know, just come and ask. That's what we're here for. It's the same thing for businesses that are in the community. Budding entrepreneurs are wanting to get a start and they don't know what to do next. We're here as a resource. You're not alone. It's a group of us. Find your tribe, and we're there to lift you up. It's the difference between not information being out there, but who knows how to use the information. When I used to work for Congressman Dennis Moore, I noticed a couple of things. There were groups of people who came in and on the first ask, started asking him, look, I need money for this and I need money for that, and you got to do this for me, and you got to do that for me. Then there was a second group, more than likely, because I'm trying to think if that was ever a minority, more than likely were non-minorities that came, sat at the table, and they shared pictures of their family. And they talked about this and they talked about that. No ask until the rapport and the relationship was established. And then they knew how to ask. So they learned how to use that resource and then they maximized it. We're here for more than what people know and understand, either as an individual or as a community or as a business. We produce innovative strategies for workforce, which means if you're growing a company and you think there's no way to do it in the normal way, we're there to help with those market uncertainties. We're there to help you design and innovate and create. If you have ideas, that's what we're here for. If you need to enter the workforce, change your job, we can take a look at what skills you have and then what areas are out there that you could pivot into. So I think I would say more than anything, know that there is a humongous resource in the community, and we're much more than just butt in seat, get a degree. We are that and we do that well, but we're so much more than that. And I would encourage people to reach out, call our department, Workforce and Economic Development, and let us help.
You got a number or email address or anything? I know I'm catching you off guard with that.
Yes, sir. My personal email, which I don't mind people reaching out to, is Alicia, Alicia .Dickens, Dickens, at mcckc.edu, from Metropolitan Community College, Kansas City, .edu.
Hey, Alicia, it was a plum pleasing pleasure. I'm stealing that from my partner, Jim Watts. That's one of his lines. I'm like, man, go on with that country stuff.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think we having these type conversations are essential in moving forward. I think it's essential for our community, African American community, and the overall Kansas City community to understand the resources that you have at your disposal, that you're inviting them, come on in, take a look at my house. Let me help you hang some pictures in your house.
Yeah.
And
can I say one more thing?
Please.
I just want to add that, a lot of people out there that are listening to this either have dreams or they know people who dream dreams. And a wise man once said, it's okay to dream dreams, but then there comes a time to wake up and make it happen.
I love it. I love it. We have a couple of sayings, mantras. The closest one that is one of my sports analogies. We go hard in the paint.
Yes, sir.
All right. As we always say in closing, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.